So I wanted to talk about the scientific approach when it comes to God, because there is a scientific aspect to it. And I don't know, for those in my Discord, I've just been like writing and thinking and pondering for a while. And what I realized is that over time, as I'm following God, I stopped requiring faith because I knew that what I did worked. So it's like a positive feedback loop. In the beginning, if you want to act in accordance to that which you perceive to be God, you have to take a leap of faith. Because what that means is you have to act not in accordance with what you see and what you think works. For example, if we talk about foregoing short term pleasures, we view it as, or we look at it as something which works, hence we do it. And so the immediate perception of this whole play, because a lot of what God really is abstaining from that which is self-destructive and slowly drifting over into a life or a cycle of doing that which is productive. But in the beginning, it is not understood, it is unseen. So I'll, for example, stop doing what quote unquote God tells me is unproductive, or God tells me is self-destructive, not knowing if that is true or not. And so for example, I'll quit the drugs, or I'll quit the sin for that matter. And then over time, I realized that me having quit the sin brought me to a better place. And so it's like a scientific examination. I can look at it and I can see, okay, it works. What about this thing? Oh my God, I quit. It works. I'm at a better place. I initially didn't think so because I was under the same scientific mindset which told me, well, this works. I smoke, I feel good. This works. This is clearly tested, proven, repeatable. It works. And the thing is that over time, what can happen, or what happened to me, is I started to become too scientific. So I would no longer require or dig deep in order to do that which goes against what I see. But I know now. I see the fruits now. I see, okay, this does actually work. And that's why I'm doing it. But the problem is that the reason I'm doing it, or the reason I quote unquote started to quote unquote follow God to begin with, was not because I was just merely doing a scientific experiment to see if the promises are being kept, or the higher ways of being work. Right? I was desperate, I was depressed, I was miserable. And so I became desperate. But over time I can reduce quote unquote following God to a scientific positive feedback loop, meaning if I see the fruits and I see that it works, why would I not continue to do it? And this is also often what I preach. I talk about you should do that which brings you fruits, you should do that which brings you forward. But if you don't know that acting not in accordance with what you can immediately see will actually bring you forward, then it's a pointless argument because you don't know yet. You're not in a positive feedback loop yet, because what happens is I get into a positive feedback loop. So I see my fruits. I see what I had to do to get the fruit. So naturally I should do again that which I had to do in order to get the fruits. And that's easy now because I see the fruits and I know it works and I've done it. So I'll do it again. And it's not that hard to say no to the things that are quote unquote not good for me, even though they appear as such. Right, which is what a temptation is, which is what sin is, which is what living for the short term is, which is what living out the lower self is. It doesn't matter which terminology you use, but that's not what got me started. And so if over time my mindset starts to shift to a scientific approach and I just do it because it works and I've continuously proven that it works, then I will lose the very reason I started to quote unquote follow God to begin with. Because I think I would have trouble following God if it didn't work. But I have no trouble following up because it works, right? Because if you aim up, if you do what is right, if you work for the long term, you will receive fruits. And I'm quote unquote past the initial stage of needing faith in order to step into a modality of being which aligns with something which I cannot yet see. I cannot yet prove if it is real. I don't know yet if it works. I'm past that. But because I'm past that, because no more faith was required or no more stepping into that which I can't see is required, I have lost touch or the reason I started to begin with. And I reduced God to a positive feedback loop, which works. And because it works, I'm going to do it. But through that approach, I would have stayed in sin because sin works. And I can repeatedly see how it works because I do the action and I feel better. Right? But yet still, as I started to quote unquote broaden my horizon and see the bigger picture, I did realize and I see that sin is self-destructive. But that's only because I have the alternative view of, well, what were to happen if I would walk in disaccordance to that which I think is making me feel good. And so I know, okay, long term, right? If I sacrifice the moment for the long term, okay, this does work. But if I would have never done it, I would have never known it worked. And so if over time, the reason I'm doing it is the reason because it works, then I'm falling back into the same mindset which kept me stuck in sin to begin with. And I hope you can follow me. And it's interesting because it's like things that are emotion tend to stay in motion. And things that aren't in motion, they tend to not be in motion either. And so, because when I make videos, I found myself recently often using explanations and ways that can show you the quote unquote scientific approach, that can show you it works. And because it works, you should do it. Now do it and see if it works. You see it works, so do it again. Because you'll want to do it again because it works. And this doesn't help somebody who doesn't already have the awareness that it works. Or who doesn't know it works. And I've been imposing a view which is very rational and scientific to a topic or a way of being which is very irrational and unscientific. Although, God doesn't oppose rationality. In a certain sense, living out in the way of God is a deeper form of rationality, is a higher form of rationality or logic, because it takes more things than a longer time span into consideration. But I started to impose a view on my imaginary person or you, which I'm talking to, which is not that different from the one which would keep you in sin. And this is why I think often my videos are already for people who already started rather than to get people started. Because think back to yourself when you quote unquote started, if you have started. It wasn't that you just knew it was gonna work, or you had nothing to fall back on. You took a leap of faith. I think you were probably desperate or in pain or struggling or whatever it was, and so you took a leap of faith out of your desperation or out of your misery or out of your hope even, or out of a faith which wasn't yet, accounted for, but you still had a little bit of faith within you. And so if I remember being at that point, or if you remember being at that point, it wouldn't work if somebody told you, look, it works. Follow God, it works. You wouldn't have followed it because your way works too, but you just don't know that it works in a lower way. And recently, I've been struggling a lot with feelings, but I've been quote unquote trying to live for God for years now, and I got to a point where I feel God every day. I feel His love, I feel His presence, I have a link, I have a connection. And I started to take this for granted. I started to rely on something which he has gifted me in order to help me live a very quote unquote boring life, or a very, yeah, it's a boring life where I say no to a lot of things. And this obviously helps me, but this has been taken away from me for the past 2 weeks. And it shook up my faith, because my faith was dependent on something, on a gift which I have received, a quote unquote connection, or a quote unquote awareness of the presence and the love that is with God. This has been taken away from me. And then I noticed that my faith was quote unquote gone. And I realized that I wasn't the originator of the faith. It's not me that has faith, it's me that has been allowed to have faith. And it's a weird thing, because we think, oh, it is us doing it, it is us having faith and aiming upwards, but really it's a gift. When these, and it's hard to explain, but when the link, the connection, maybe some of you know what I'm talking about when I say the link. Maybe after a deep session of prayer and then tears come or whatever, you can feel the quote unquote link or the quote unquote connection. But the link has been taken away, and I couldn't use, I started to rely too much on the link or on that which I have received as a gift in order for me to continue do what is right and what I should be doing. And so it led me to question everything, because the scientific method broke down. God was like, look, I'll take away the love, I'll take away the connection, I'll take away your faith, I'll take away everything. And now what are you going to do? You're going to sit there with your scientific approach? What if that which you worked in accordance with were to stop producing fruits? Would you then still worship me? Would you then still follow my ways? What if they didn't work? What if over time you've started to follow my ways because they worked and not because you're following me? Right? This is why I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson. I think his influence in what I'm saying is apparent. But his focus, for example, because I love his books, I love his views, I think they're true. But his views are very scientific. You do it because it works. Because it works, you do it. See, it works, do it again. God must be real, God must be right, God must be true. Because it works, it is scientifically verifiable. But if the scientifically verifiableness, or the fact that you can verify, is the basis of why I'm doing it, then I'm losing that thing which got me started initially, which was something deeper than that. It was deeper than just a mere scientific approach to seeing if the way of God works. It was something more than that. It was, I don't know, something deeper in the soul, a desperation or a pain or a longing even. I don't know what it was. I know what it was, but I can't. It's hard to articulate. And over time, I've lost the reason I started to begin with, because the reason I started to begin with was no longer required in order for me to keep going, because things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. If I know it works, I'm going to continue doing what it works. But I didn't start out because I know it worked. I only found that out later. And so I think in a lot of my videos, it's already a prerequisite that you have started in order to grasp what I'm hinting to. Because if you haven't started, you can't. How are you going to know it works? You don't. So how are you going to know what I'm saying is true? You won't. So and in that sense, it's almost like I can't bring anybody to God. Because I can't inflict that necessity or desperation into you. I can only show you it works if you're already doing it. Or I can tell you it works, but then it's up to you to believe me, and then it's up to you to take a leap of faith and quote unquote do what I say. But then you're following me. Then you're following my scientific approach. That's just something I've learned. I don't know. My faith was taken away, and the fruits were taken away. And then I realized, oh shit, it doesn't work anymore. Now the positive feedback loop has been interrupted. And as much as it was painful, it forced me to confront something which is deeper than that. A deeper reason. That same reason I started to begin with, because it was more than just hoping for a positive feedback loop or hoping that it scientifically worked and was a better way of living or a better way of being, right? It was more than that. And by taking the fruits away, I've been reduced back to, I crystallized my faith into its essence again, and I've been able to let go of my dependency on it working in order to do it, to follow God and not follow that which God can give you once you follow Him, right? Because I've talked about this before in another video, and I said that even if you're an egotistical person, purely for your own sake, it is better for you to follow God than not to follow God. It is better for you because the way is a higher way of being. It works on a higher level. But what got me to that realization was not an egoic view. It was humility. It was opening myself up to the possibility that the way which I see the things and the way which I choose which habits to do maybe isn't taking into consideration all that could be, right? And only through that humility was I allowed to find a higher way of living. But I speak from privilege when I say these things, because if you purely have yourself in mind, you won't figure out that God works even better, because you won't get there, because it is not a scientific approach which gets you there. It is only that the scientific approach is something that you can recognize, or you can see that there is a scientific approach after you've done it. But then if you start to rely on the scientific approach, or if you start to rely on that which God will give you once you follow Him, you no longer follow God. You worship what He gives you. And in some sense, you commit idolatry, or I have committed idolatry. Because my faith was based on the faith I have received. What if God takes my faith away, right? In the Bible, people pray for faith. What if God takes away that which I have received by following Him, such as peace, a connection, love, feeling good because I know I'm walking in truth? What if, long-term fruits? Look at the book of Job. I'm reading the book of Job at the moment. What if God took it all away from you? And even your faith, what would you then do? Would you really still stand on something? Or are the things you cling to a result of what God is giving you? And if that which you cling to is a result of what God is giving you and God stops giving you that, do you really have faith in Him, or do you have faith in that which He gives you? Because that's what started to happen to me. Over time, I stopped following God, but I started following a method which works, a scientific approach, or I reduced it to a scientific approach. I reduced me doing what is right to the fact, or to the notion that I do it because it works. I've recognized it works, but I have recognized that sin worked before. And the thing which led me to go beyond my horizon was irrational and deeper than that. And it taught me the spiritual warfare which I've been going through, that we must keep that which goes deeper than rationality and things that work in order to get closer. Because it's not something intellectual to begin with. I just like to intellectualize because my mind is very strong in my head. And so when I make videos, I often use this scientific approach. And you can sit there and you can be like, yeah, I know what he's talking about. But that's only because you have it. How do you bring someone how do you expand someone's horizon? If you can't show him, look, if you expanded your horizon, it would work. If you can't see that, it's hard. And I don't know if you can even do it. But that's just what I'm wondering, because I make this video because I believe that some people I can help. Some people I can quote unquote bring to God, whatever that means. But the real question is, how do you get somebody started? How do you get somebody started? How do you get somebody to act not in accordance with that which he thinks works? You know, for how long I thought sin worked, because it looks like it works. And in a sense, it does work. But it's a lower way of living. And only by living in a higher way can you tell that, yeah, living in a higher way is better. But what if you don't know that yet? What if you have no fruits to fall back on? What if you don't have faith? How can you get faith, right? It's like it's almost like an irony. It's like, it's easy to spiral up once you're spiraling up, or it's easy to aim up once you've been aiming up for years and been traveling up due to your aiming up. But how do you aim up when you're low? How do you keep that thing which made you aim up when you were low to begin with? That's the real challenge, I feel like. And that's what we receive when God takes it all away again. Follow him despite it not working. Follow his ways despite them not producing fruits. That's what faith, real faith, would be. My faith is baby faith to a degree, because I follow God because it works. That's a reason why I follow God. But then, am I committing idolatry? Am I following him because of what he gives me? Or am I being too harsh on myself here? I'm not sure. Because I've posed this question before. What if Jesus said you should rape children? Would you follow him? No, you wouldn't. Why? Because something within can recognize what is divinity, what is truth, what is higher. But at the same time, it is not that you possess this. This has been given to you by God. Because you fall back on a spiritual understanding. You can't intellectually explain to me. You can intellectually explain to me why it is bad to rape children. Because it breaks apart society, and it would scar the children, and you could even use a sort of scientific explanation. For example, you could have guilt and shame, although that isn't rational, but you could use it, you could pose it as a rational negative consequence and say that's why you shouldn't do it. But intellectually speaking, in of itself, you don't really know why it is bad. And this is where I'm going to lose some people, but there's something deeper within you which knows this is immediately bad. You know this is bad, right? Which goes deeper. That doesn't need, you don't need to logically think about it first. You immediately see it is wrong because you have that thing, right? The Holy Spirit. And that's also why, because I have that thing, I know who Jesus is, because this aligns. This, I can see the oneness. But what if I only follow him because what he says works, or because what he says is the truth, or because he is the truth? Well, if he is the truth, then that's good. I want to follow the truth, right? I have an irrational commitment to following the truth, and it did lead me to Christ. But what if I need to broaden my horizon even more? But I don't think it's going to lead me away from Christ either. The more I broaden my horizon, the more I get to a fullness of understanding of what he even taught. Because following Christ is like so subjective, man. You have 2 billion people claiming that, and you can have what I personally perceive as to be extremely carnal to extremely spiritual people claiming the same way. That's why this way is so different. Because it's not just a way like any other way. It is the way. And depending on where you are at is how you walk it, is how you see it. And so by growing, you don't grow away from Christ. You grow into a deeper understanding of Christ. That's what's so fascinating. Because it's like I can sit there and I can broaden my horizon and let go of my mental or egoic attachment to a certain religion or a certain teaching in hopes of finding a deeper truth. But I won't find none. It doesn't exist. There is nothing that can be deeper than that which Christ taught and preached. I can only get to a deeper understanding of it. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. Because I didn't achieve that Christ because I wanted to follow Christ. I achieved that Christ because I wanted the truth. And I was okay with being in a wrong religion. I was okay with being wrong in general, being wrong about everything. I think that's a necessity to get to Christ. And so it's easy. It's easy. I don't know if it's easy, but it's easy to know Christ is the way once you're walking it. But how do you tell someone, show someone it's the way who isn't walking it? How do you even show the way? Like it's like even spiritually, how do you show the way? How do you truly show the way? You can't. You can't. You need, people are where they're at. People see what they see. You can blatantly see something is self-destructive, but if that person doesn't see it, that person will think this action works, and they'll continuously do it, because there's too much other stuff in their lives that they need to go through before they can arrive at that. And if you hyper focus on that, you won't be able to change the direction at which they're aiming. Because really it is, I don't need somebody to validate my belief or to claim the same intellectual belief system that I claim. It's not about, I want to help. I want to help you aim up. Because it's better for you. It's better for me. It's better for everybody. It's like, it's just a higher way of being. It's better for everybody. Why not do it? You know? For everything, everybody. Like, because that's a real challenge. It's easy to be on YouTube and to watch people or be in communities who already believe what you believe in, who are already more or less where you're at. But how do you get somebody who's opposing you and who has his rightful reasons and his own scientific approach to open his horizon and come to you, so to speak? That's a real challenge. And I feel like my videos in that sense are like pointless. Because I can speak and I can talk about things, but you only know they work because you've done them yourself. How do you convince, or how do you... It's like, how do you help somebody that doesn't want to be helped? Because you still want to help him, right? Because if he were to allow himself to be helped, it would be better for everybody. And it's only a spiritual blindness or spiritual sickness which would make somebody not want to do that which is best for him and for everybody. But at the root of that is pride. Because they think they already know. They think they already understand. They don't have the humility to let go of what they believe in and to let go of their clinging to their ways. Because they think their ways work, but their ways don't work. They don't realize that the result of their ways is why their life sucks. And not just the absence of their ability to do even more self-destruction. Like in a sense, on a lower form of being or living, you think if you could just do more of that which is actually self-destructive, you would escape the self-destruction. Failing to realize it would put you even deeper into self-destruction. That's the whole lie. That's the whole deception. And so the real question is, how do you reach those people? How do you reach those people who feel attacked by you, who already know and who think that the thing they are clinging to is the thing which helps them out of the misery, failing to realize the thing which they are clinging to help them out of the misery is the thing which enforces the misery to begin with. It's like such a deep deception. And again, even look at what I'm talking about now. These people won't understand what I'm talking about, but you might, because you already have what I have. So, and then there's like, okay, what's the point of me making this video for you? You already know. I'm not doing much here. But I should grab the person who doesn't know, who can't see. How can you make them see? That's like, yeah, I'm gonna figure this out someday.